ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। 224 अत एवात्र दृष्टान्तः योग्यः प्राक् सम्यगीरितः घटाकाशमहाकाश जलाकाशाब्रखात्मकः. So Vidyaranya is analyzing Asi Padartha. That is Aikyam, identity between the two, not unity between the two. That's identity. The things which are looking different on account of ignorance. So once the ignorance goes, you understand both are essentially one thing alone. So Aikyam of a Jivatma and a Paramatma. And this Aikyam is possible at the level of consciousness, which is the reality, Paramarthik Satyam, ultimate reality, we can say absolute reality. So at all other levels, there are differences. 4 levels, there are differences. The Upadhi itself are different. One is a Vyashti, Samashti, Avidya, Maya. Then at the level of reflected consciousness also there is a difference. So basically at a Sthula Sharira level, Vyashti Sthula Sharira, Samashti Sthula Sharira, difference. Then Sukshma Sharira level also there is a difference. Samashti, micro and macro. And Karana Sharira level also there is a difference. Now we call it as a Avidya and Maya. So Chidabhasa is different, and only that OC is not different. So 3 reflected consciousnesses, whatever, and the Upadhi, the 4 levels, there are differences. And just at one level, that at level of consciousness there is no difference, at absolute level there is no difference. But for Ajnani, some vasanas basically, same vasana, at the vasanas of Veda, continue at the OC level also. So he thinks there is a Veda between them. So we are used to difference at 4 levels, and so he thinks there is a Veda. This habitual confusion, not only for the layperson, it is for philosophers also. And so Sankhya and Yoga, we were just discussing that thing day before yesterday. Sankhya and Yoga also, they have this confusion that the difference between Jiva and Ishvara, there is a real difference between Jiva and Ishvara. And that is how Sankhya says there are many Atmas. No, Swamiji, they say there are many Jivas. We also say there are many Jivas. Really speaking, this is a difference. We never say the difference between one Jiva and other Jiva is really a difference at the level of Atma. There is a difference at the level of Upadhi, we say. They say no. Jivas are basically essentially different. And what is Jiva? If at that level we never accept difference. They say Asanga Chit Vibhuhu. Jiva is nothing but the Asangam, consciousness, and Vibhuhu, all pervading. That level we never accept difference. But they accept. So they say there are many Atmas. So that is a Bhranti. And yoga also, they also have a confusion between Jiva and Ishvara. They say, well, Ishvara also is basically, Ishvara is different from this Jiva. And so Ishvara is Asanga Chit Vibhu, etc. But then basically Ishvara is a Purusha Vishesha, Purushottama. And Jivas are all Purusha. He is a Purusha Vishesha. There is a difference between, that is a Yoga Sutra also, I have quoted also. So that is the difference between Jiva and Ishvara. Really there is a difference between them. So anyway, so just a layperson may understand that there is a difference between Jiva and Ishvara, it's okay. But the philosophers also have such kind of a differences. Anyway, but Upanishad, so Upanishad does temporarily go along with this confusion to win our confidence and then say, well, okay, let's say that the consciousness level also there is a difference. So at a Veshti level, the consciousness is called Kutastha. And Samashti level, the consciousness is called Brahman. And so the Upanishad gives two different names. So if that consciousness is one alone, then there cannot be two names. But says like that, consciousness at a Veshti level, Kutastha, consciousness at a macro level called Brahman, etc. Similarly, but ultimately we have seen that, of course, this portion. So like that, Tvampada Lakshyartha is Kutastha, Tatpada Lakshyartha is Brahman. But fortunately, Upanishad does not stop there. If it stops there, there is a difference at the level of consciousness also. Because you give two different names. If there is a one thing, Tvampada Lakshyartha is of Brahman and Tatpada Lakshyartha is Brahman, why are you using another word called Kutastha? If you use another word, a new concept will be created. And therefore, but Upanishad, even though goes along with our confusion, that there is a difference between Jiva and Ishvara as though at a Paramarthika level. But the job Upanishad does is puts a equal sign between them. And thereby whole thing goes away. Yeah, it's an equation. Tattvamasi, Asi is an equation actually. And so basically by putting that important mark is equal to, so from our mind, Upanishad expects that from our mind something should disappear. What should disappear? Micro, macro, Vyashti, Samashti should disappear. That's all. Equal to shows there is no Vyashti, Samashti. Vyashti, Samashti, well, if you continue, then there is a difference. But if you put an equal sign, so Upanishad is telling us, drop this. At the level of consciousness, drop this Vyashti consciousness is, the consciousness at a Vyashti level is Kutastha, and consciousness at a Samashti level is Brahman. If there is no equal sign between them, we would have taken the difference, even at the consciousness level also. Tvampada Lakshyartha is Kutastha, Tatpada Lakshyartha is Brahman, both are different, we can accept that. But basically this thing, putting an equal sign, Upanishad tells us very clearly, drop the idea of Vyashti Samashti. Vyashti and Samashti cannot be one. If they are saying as one, definitely Upanishad expects us to drop the idea of a micro-macro, Vyashti Samashti. At the level of a consciousness, dropping the idea, Upanishad is conveying to drop the idea of a Vyashti and Samashti. And therefore, so really speaking, we gave two names, Kutastha and Brahman, Vyashti and Samashti, but by putting an equal sign. Well, then what is it? So then you cannot use word Brahman also, because Brahman at the level of a Samashti. Kutastha, if you are saying drop the word Kutastha, at a Veshti level. I am telling you to drop the word Brahman also, because that's at Samashti level. You say Veshti Samashti is not there, by putting equal sign there you have to drop. Then well, you drop Brahman also. Yes, you drop Brahman. We don't mind. Right? Kutastha and Brahman, both are words. Ultimately, yato vacho nivartante, apya manasasa. Yeah. And therefore, where is the, we say was just limitless consciousness. Okay? Because you are now tired of this Brahman. Okay. So we'll say one limitless consciousness alone is there. Anyway, this is just by the way. So, Anadi Maya in 223, well, Vidyaranya said, Anadi Maya Brantaha Jiveshau Suvilakshana Manyanti. Anadi Maya, because of Maya only, they, that's a big relief. It's a respite for us. Maya Jiveshu. That's all. Jiva Isha Ishvara is due to Maya. Maya creates, and therefore Mithya. And therefore there is no problem at all at Veshti Samashti both level. Well, we can make easily the equal sign between them, because their difference, because Jiva and Ishvara both are Mithya, and therefore the difference between them also is Mithya. Anyway, and therefore we can easily put that equal sign, and so dropping the idea of Veshti and Samashti, micro and macro. Anyway, so Vyudasaya, well, ultimately it says Vyudasaya, Tad Vyudasaya. So for negating that different micro-macro adjective, well, for negation of that, this equal to sign has been put. Tayoho Shodhanam Kevalam. So Shodhanam. Shodhanam means basically, I told you that Tayoho, both. Tat and Tvam Padartha, basically. The analysis of that ultimately leads to the purification of both, ultimately. Purification means you will understand it's just one pure consciousness is there, nothing else. And then in verse 224 it is been told, Ataha eva atra drashtantaha yogyah prak samyakirita. Vidyaranya reminds us, prak samyakirita. I have very well narrated I have very well narration of this example of Akasha I have already given you. Prak, before. Samyagirita, I have very well discussed that example. Yogya Drishtanta, I have a proper example I have given you. Ghatakasha, Mahakasha, Jalakasha, Megakasha, I have given you this example in order to explain that ultimately one Akasha is there. Then all this difference is Veshti Akasha and Samashti Akasha, Jalakasha and Megakasha, or Ghatakasha and Mahakasha, etc. All these differences are really not there. Where Samyagirita, where he discussed, before it's all right, but gave us the number, verse number 18 to 22. Anyway, so this is one all-pervading, pure and partless, and without attributes that Akasha is there. There are these differences between Ghatakasha, the Akasha which is enclosed in a pot, and Mahakasha, like a Veshti Samashti, micro-macro. That division is not there. So then he explains further, again he explains that example and reminds us basically. 225. So, Jalabropa Adyadhinete Jalakasha Braketayoho Adharau tu Ghatakasha Mahakashau Sunirmalau. Jalakasha. Jala Pratibimbita Akasha is Jalakasha. So in pot there is a water, and then the space is reflected in that is called Jalakasha. So, anyway, Abrakhe. Come again means Akasha. So Abrakha actually, but it's a dual, right? So Jalakasha Abrakhe. So it's a combined. Jalakasha Abrakha means Abrakasha. Abram means basically Apaha Bibharti iti Abram. Apaha, water, which holds water, clouds. So Abram means cloud, rain-bearing cloud. Yeah, not sometimes there is no water in the clouds, only very white clouds. No, Abram means a water, rain-bearing clouds. Definitely, then there will be the space getting reflected there also. And Abrakhe, come, Kha is, it's a Akasha, but it's a neuter word. So, Khamke Khani, these are the forms. And therefore, it's a dual here in a samasa. So K. So Jalakasha and Abrakha has been combined. So Jalakasha Abrakhe is called Megakasha. Say, but he is using another word now. So, well, water, the space which is reflected in the water in the pot, or the space which is reflected in the mega, in the clouds. They, both of them, well, what? Both are reflected spaces, and therefore both are mithya, naturally. Why they are mithya? Because they have a borrowed existence. Simple. Borrowed existence means what? Borrowed from the upadhi also we can say. Borrowed from upadhi. Well, jala abra upadhi. So it says here, jala abra upadhi adhine. Since both the reflected spaces, vyashti and samashti, vyashti means in the water which is there in the pot. In that also there is a reflection of a space, and in the mega also, in the clouds also, because since there is a water there also, the space is reflected there. So vyashti and samashti, well, is adhine, dependent upon their existence. Both reflected spaces, their existence are existences are reflected in, are dependent upon this upadhi. Jala in the water, the jala in the pot, and Lord, let's say upadhi as such is gata, we can say also. So dependent on upadhi, jalam and megha, basically you can say that way, water in the pot and clouds. Okay. So micro reflection, jalakasha in mega, and jalakasha in gata, and megakasha macro reflection with reflected space. So this is one point, that these vyashti samashti reflected spaces are mithya, because they are totally dependent on the reflecting medium or upadhi. So pot in the water, pot in the water in the pot, or water in the mega. Mega is upadhi, and this water in the pot also is upadhi. Both. So this is micro, and that is macro. So this is one of the reasons to say mithya. Both are mithya. Then the second thing also, it has been told here, tayoho adharau tau. Well, ultimately, so both basically, so this upadhi itself, well, the second point is, even though there is a difference between them, micro, macro, etc., still they are mithya because reflection is mithya, and therefore jalakasha and abrakha, so abrakasha, megakasha, both are mithya, because reflection itself is mithya. Just because we are saying it is, they are dependent on the upadhi, etc., but reflection is mithya, reflection is not satyam. And therefore, well, the difference also is mithya. So, vyashti samashti differences are mithya. Tayoho adhara utau. For both these refractions, there is adhara. Adhara means adhishthanam here. So, initially we accept micro, macro, adhara. Different. Tayoho adharo. So, going along with this confused people, we give two different names. So, for, we give a ghatakasha. That's a micro space, original space, and mahakasha, that is macro original space, which is reflected in the megakasha, which is reflected in the mega, basically. So original space also we are giving two names, ghatakasha, mahakasha. Reflected spaces are two. So jalakasha, megakasha, reflected spaces. But ghatakasha, mahakasha, there also the adhara of both, well, we give two different names, ghatakasha and mahakasha actually. So, but that is Upanishad. That is going along with the confusion of the student. But that's all right. But then further, well, we put a equal to sign between these two spaces, between two adhara spaces. Ghatakasha is equal to mahakasha. That's all. Then therefore it's gone. What is gone? The differences between them is gone. Micro, macro difference has gone. Ghatakasha is equal to mahakasha, because there is one space. I have already told you last time. I already told you, because Akasha cannot be divided. If you can divide, you can definitely do that. Water we can definitely tell. The water in the pot and water in the ocean. Well, that is okay. That these differences are micro differences are okay, because water can be divided. Akasha, since it does not have any avayava, temporarily we accept that way. And for the example, and if Akasha cannot be divided, how will you make a micro difference? And therefore, well, ultimately, even though we say Adhara also 2, Adhishthanam is 2, original space also 2, but actually it is 1. And how to say it is 1? Upanishad does not have does not have a speech to tell us, but it puts a equal to sign. This is an example, equal to sign. Gata Akasha is equal to Mahakasha. Therefore, drop the idea of a micro and macro, original space. Give it up. And both are what? Sunirmalau. No attributes at all. Attributes are there, immediately differences will come. Superior attributes and inferior attributes. Yeah, immediately then definitely the differences will be there. Attributes are added means the differences will be there, naturally. In fact, attributes itself, any attribute will bring a difference. That is why attribute is used. We call it qualification. Visheshana's job is only this, to distinguish one thing from the other. That's the only job they do. Anyway, so here he again reminded us in the example that by saying Ghatakasha is equal to Mahakasha, we are telling the person to drop the idea of micro and macro space, original space. You have to drop the idea. And what about reflected spaces? But they are mithya. They are dependent upon upadhi. And therefore, as such, reflection is mithya without even talking about upadhi. Any reflection cannot be truth. Anyway, and therefore don't worry about it. But what about this upadhi, medium? Oh, that medium also is ultimately mithya. Anyway, so this is how it is. So reflected spaces dependent upon upadhi, therefore they are mithya, since they borrow the existence from the upadhi, therefore they are mithya. Or as such, being reflection itself, they are mithya. And therefore what about original? Because it is one thing alone. There is one space alone. So anyway, this is how we have to compare. Similarly, now he will compare from this example. Here also in Vashti and Samashti, what is the situation he will say? 226. Evamananda vijnana mayau mayadiyor vasho tadadisthana kutastha brahmani tu sunirmale. Similarly, this reflected consciousness, micro and macro, differences exist. Evam, in the same way, Ananda Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya Vijnanamaya. We have already seen that. Anandamaya represents Ishvara, macro, and macro Chidabhasa, and reflected consciousness. And that creates a confusion, because Anandamaya word is generally used with Vashti Chidabhasa. Right? For a Jiva, we say like it's Anandamaya. But Anandamaya he has already used before also for Ishvara only. And for that, he is telling us to refer Mandukya. He, without saying, he says to go to Mandukya. So anyway, so in mantra 5 and 6 in the Mandukya, this thing is quite clear, where Anandamaya is equated with Ishvara. In mantra number 5, Yatra Suptaha na kanchana kamam kamayate na kanchana swapnam pashyati tat sushuptam sushupta sthanaha eki bhutaha pragnana ghanaha eva anandamaya. He Ananda book, Cheto Mukha, Pragnya, Trutiyah Padaha. The Pragnya has been described as Anandamaya. Pragnya, deep sleeper, Vyashti. But then immediately in mantra 6, this is a mantra 5. In mantra 6, immediately said, Eshaha Sarveshwara, Sarvantaryami, Sarvagnya, etc. We have seen that mantra also with a lot of detail. Eshaha. This Pragnya is a Sarveshwara, means Ishvara. But Pragnya is Anandamaya. Ishvara is Anandamaya. This is how it is. Okay? Yeshaha Sarveshwara, Yeshaha Sarvasya Yonihi, Prabhavapyohi Bhutanam, etc. So, Upanishad is very clear. This Pragnya is Ishvara. Pragnya is Ishvara. So if Prajna is told as if Anandamaya, Ishvara is Anandamaya. Why? Vashti and Samashti differences should be. And if it is in a unmanifest condition, how will you find a difference? If anything which is unmanifest, if anything which is undifferentiated, how will you find difference? In undifferentiated state, you cannot find difference. That is how it is called undifferentiated. And therefore, Vashti Samashti Beda will not be there even in the Upadhi also. Acharya does not have that Beda at all. Vashti Upadhi Avidya and Samashti Upadhi Maya indiscriminately Acharya uses. That's how I gave you example of a Vivek Chudami in which he was to describe a Karana Sharira. So while Karana Sharira is Avidya is to be described, he says it is Maya. And he gave whole description. Shankaracharya ji gave a whole description of Maya in a Karana Sharira. This is how it is. So at unmanifest, when the things are unmanifest, well, it is, the differences won't exist. That's how unmanifest is called Avyakrutam. What is Avyaktam is Avyakrutam also. Yeah, Avyakrutam means undifferentiated. So that's how we have so many names for Maya or Avidya. So Avyaktam, Avyakrutam, Shaktihi, Maya, Avidya, Prakritihi. So many names are there. All words I have explained you in the second chapter, or first chapter rather, whatever. So I have explained all these words. Why one thing alone, the Upadhi, why they give so different names? Every word brings some different meaning. From different aspect you have to see the same thing. And therefore, anyway, so here the word Anandamaya is used for Ishvara. Okay, so that is a Chidabhasa, macro Chidabhasa, right? Reflected consciousness at a macro level is called Anandamaya. And so remembering that equation, well, he uses word Anandamaya only. Equation means that equation. Prajna has been compared with the Ishvara, etc. in Mandukya. And that he has already introduced also, as I told you in verse, if you want to refer, in verse 212 we have already seen this also, Anandamaya as Ishvara. Anyway, and then Vijnanamaya refers to micro-Chidabhasa, because consciousness reflected in the buddhi, manifest in the buddhi, right, is a Vijnanamaya. And so identified with the buddhi. Even though it is a sakshi of a buddhi, consciousness is just a sakshi of a buddhi. The very buddhi comes out of the consciousness and then it is illumined by the consciousness. So I am a sakshi of a buddhi, but due to ignorance, I identify with the buddhi. So once you identify with the buddhi, you are jiva. So jiva is a Vijnanamaya. So that is, so here micro Chidabhasa we can say. So Vijnanamaya refers to micro Chidabhasa. And these two Chidabhasas also like that reflected spaces were dependent upon the respective upadhis. Same way these two reflected consciousnesses also are dependent upon two upadhis. Well, and therefore both are mithya. Upadhi we know, avidya or maya, both are mithya. Anyway, so maya dhiyoho vashau. There he has used, for example, he used the word adhine. He says now vashau. So they are under the control of both this, Jiva and Ishvara, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. Both these reflected consciousnesses are dependent upon two reflecting mediums. One is Maya, other is Dhiya. Dhiya means Buddhi. So Maya is, sometimes you see, we should understand this all. I don't think you have any confusion, I am sure. Buddhi they say sometimes they say Karana Sharira. So we should not say, oh Dhiya Swamiji, it is Sukshma Sharira. And then they are not saying about Karana Sharira. See, this is how it is. Most of the text will not talk about Karana Sharira. Jiva is Sukshma Sharira Abhimani, they will say like this only. You won't find anywhere, hardly you will find Karana Sharira Abhimani, Chaitanya. No. Because Karana Sharira is unmanifest. So it won't make difference, If I say Buddhi is there and consciousness get reflected, you are able to appreciate. Consciousness is reflected in a Karana Sharira. How will you understand it? You won't understand it. You may infer. You may infer, yeah, there must be a Karana Sharira which is unmanifest, and in that it is reflected. But Buddhi is something which everyone knows. And Buddhi is conscious also, we are able to appreciate. Buddhi basically is a jadam made from the subtle elements, and it is now working as a conscious entity, and therefore consciousness must have been reflected there. I am able to appreciate easily. And therefore, and the body, when from when the jiva's prarabdha is over, now he leaves this body, gross body, and goes to another body. If I say Karana Sharira goes, you cannot appreciate. You can't appreciate that. So they say like that, Sukshma Sharira, Vimani, Sukshma Sharira, in a Sukshma Sharira or in a Buddhi it is reflected and all. We may feel that why in Buddhi? It's Avidya is Upadhi, Karana Sharira is Upadhi. And you are all the time talking about Sukshma Sharira Upadhi. But anyway, Sukshma Sharira is Karya and therefore Karanam is always there. No Karya exists independent of the Karanam. And therefore definitely Karana we have to take it, but since it is unmanifest, we don't talk about it. That's how sometimes they say Sharira Dvayam also. Yeah, they all the time talk about two bodies, subtle and gross, subtle and gross. If sometimes we feel, what about the third body, Karana Sharira? I think this point we discussed somewhere. But so, this we should not worry about. It is included. It is included. When you talk about Karya, Karanam is included. But since it is unmanifest, we don't much talk about it. So anyway, here it is said, Maya, Dhiyo, Vashau, they are under the control, both this Jiva and Ishvara, both the reflected consciousnesses are under the control of basically two reflecting mediums, Maya and Buddhi. So Maya is a reflecting medium for Anandamaya Ishvara, and Buddhi is a reflecting medium for Microchidakasa, Jiva, etc. Since both are Mithya, and therefore differences between Jiva and Ishvara also is Mithya. Because both are dependent upon their respective upadhis for their existence. Anything which has a dependent existence is Mithya. If upadhi is not there, where is the reflection? If reflecting medium is not there, where is reflection? There is no reflection. If water itself is not there, well, the sun will not get reflected. Therefore, reflected sun's existence is totally dependent upon the upadhi. That way they are saying. So, both this Jiva and Ishvara, the reflected consciousnesses are dependent upon these two upadhis, Maya and Buddhi, for their existence. Therefore, both are Mithya. And therefore, the difference between them also is Mithya. Anyway, and both have Adhisthana. So that is also been told. Different Adhisthana. Kutastha and Brahman. So, Kutastha Brahmani. Kutastha is Adhisthana of a Vijnanamaya. And Brahman is Adhisthana of a Ishvara. So, this is the way they say. Like there it has been told, right? Ghatakasha and Mahakasha. Ghatakasha is Adhara Adhishthanam for a Jalakasha. And Mahakasha is Adhishthanam for a Meghakasha. It has been told, right, in the previous. So here also they are saying like that. So Upanishad commits a mistake deliberately, saying two names. Anyway, but when Asipada comes in, so far as Tatpada Lakshyartha, Tatpada Vachyartha, Tvampada Vachyartha. Then Tatpada Lakshyartha, Tvampada Lakshyartha, parallel, like a track, railway track. It goes on and on. Then suddenly brings a Asi, so equal to. So then everything goes. And therefore, so Upanishad for some time introduced this word. This Kutastha and Brahman, a lot of people had that difficulty. Kutastha is a Veshti, it's Adhishthanam of a Veshti, and Brahman is Adhishthanam for a Samashti. Like that, and therefore there must be different because two words. No. Asipada has been brought in order to remove the idea of, totally remove the idea of micro and macro, Veshti, Samashti. So there is one alone. Anyway, so Nirmala, here also, this Adhishthanam, Kutastha, Brahman, both are basically Sunirmala, free from any attributes. Mala here means not dosha. See, this is why we say like this. Because, you see, the Nirdosham is Samam Brahma. There also this point was raised by, I think, Bhashyakara. Dosha means basically some kind of a defects, right? So we may feel the Brahman is free from any defects, dosha. So Brahman may be having virtues. But that's not. Therefore, dosha is never translated as some kind of a defect or something. Dosha means an attribute. Any attribute. And therefore, therefore here also sunirmalau, both are basically free from any mala, impurity. No, both are free from all attributes. Good or bad, anything. Free from total. That's how it is. Then only it is limitless Brahman. One limitless Brahman. It is possible that both Kutastha and Brahman are one. It is only possible under one condition. That Brahman must be free from attributes. Yeah. Otherwise, Vyashti Adhisthana Kutastha and Samashti Adhisthana Brahman, if still has some kind of an attribute, then the differences will be there. You cannot say one. So if you say they are one, means it must be free from all attributes. Any attribute in Brahman is considered mala, impurity, because it is not. That is how we say, you become free from any mala. Mala means this impurity. So if you take yourself as with any attribute, even good attributes also, it is equally, it is totally an ignorance. Under the spell of ignorance, one considers oneself as a virtuous also. Totally means totally. You are not even a punyashali also. Oh, I am meritorious. You are not even meritorious. Or you are not even demeritorious. It's my word, whatever it is. So, meritorious and demeritorious. Nothing. Sinner, No. Free from any attribute. Shuddham, asangam. No relationship with anything. No punyam, no papam, no raga, dvesha, this, that, etc. Nothing. Janma, marana, etc. Anyway, and so Sunirmalau, they don't have any attributes. In verse 227, we said this, we don't accept this Sankhya and Yoga because they accept this micro-macro difference at the level of consciousness, Atma level. At the level of Atma, they accept the difference. Sankhya accepts the difference between two jivas, means two Atmas. And Yoga people accepts the difference between Jiva and Ishvara. Both are, so we are not accepting because the difference itself is mithya. Why? Because both are mithya. Jiva and Ishvara itself is a mithya. And therefore the difference between Jiva and Ishvara is mithya. And therefore the difference between Jiva and Jiva also is mithya. Because Jiva is Ishvara, essentially. And therefore where is a question of a difference between one Jiva and another Jiva also? No, but we talk about it's all Upadhi. If you bring Upadhi, there is a difference. But then Upadhi level, there is a difference. Yeah, but then Upadhi is mithya, and therefore the difference between one Jiva and other Jiva also is mithya. Difference between Jiva and Jagat also is mithya. Everything mithya. All three came from Maya. All three. One came from the Tamoguna, other came from Rajoguna, third came from Sattva-guna. That's what we discussed in second chapter. So basically Ishvara becomes through Sattva-guna became a Nimitta Karana. Ishvara, through Tamoguna became a Upadana Karana of the Jagat. And Ishvara through Rajoguna became a Jiva. Appears as a Jiva, Why appear? Because the three gunas are appearance in Brahman. The three gunas are nothing but this Prakriti or Maya. That is Maya, that is Mithya. That is non-separate from Brahman. And therefore Brahman appears as a Jiva, Brahman appears as a Jagat, Brahman appears as a Ishvara through Maya, through three gunas. Anyway, so this Asi Pada, continues. Anyway, 227. Etat kakshopayogena sankhya yogau matau yadi dehonnamaya kakshatvat atmatvena bhupeyata. So, there is somebody who loves this Sankhya Yoga philosopher for some reason, I don't know. So he says we should not reject them. We should not reject them. He says after Mahavakya equation, Well, ultimately both original consciousnesses are equated as one. That is okay. But before you put that equation, before you put that equal to sign, well, there is an intermediary stage where we can say Vyashti Adhisthana, Vyashti, I mean original consciousness at a Vyashti level, which we call Kutastha, and a Samashti level also, and that is we call as a Brahman. So before equation, if you don't equate, well, we let us accept Kutastha and Brahman are different. Let us, what is the problem? So Sankhya says that Atma is different. One Asanga Chid Vibhuhu and the other also is Asanga Chid Vibhuhu, but they are many. That is okay. What is the problem in that? Let it, you put equal to sign, then we will see. But before that, let us enjoy the freedom and have that harmony with the Sankhya yogas, etc. And so in their mind, basically, that Kutastha and this Brahman, well, still it is Sampada Lakshartha and Tatpada Lakshartha, well, still it is, they are different. So in student's mind, well, these two separate consciousnesses, original consciousnesses are there. His mind is similar to like Sankhya Yoga's mind only. So during this initial stage, well, intermediate state, Ravi say, all students are Sankhya Yoga philosophers only. If we don't put that equal to sign, definitely. So Tsampada Lakshartha is Kutastha and Tatpada Lakshartha is this Brahman. And if you don't equate, then we also may perhaps believe the same thing. And therefore then we also are like Sankhya Yoga philosophers only. And so one of the student, well, he says that, why can't we accept Sankhya Yoga philosophy? You will see what answer Vidyaranya gives. Etat kaksha upayogena, this intermediate state. Kaksha means the intermediate stage. So etat kaksha upayogena, this intermediate state, upayoga, useful. This intermediate state has a useful existence. So Sankhya Yoga matau, why can't Sankhya Yoga matau? Let us be some matau. Let us accept. Why can't we accept this Sankhya philosophy and Yoga philosophy? Once you put equal to sign, well, we will all drop. But before that, let us accept both are different. Kutastha and Brahman are different. And so that way we don't have any contradiction with Sankhya Yoga. They also say Jiva different, Jiva Ishvara different. So let us accept it. So iti, if such a suggestion is given by a student in favor of a Sankhya Yoga philosopher, Vidyaranya says, well, then all philosophies are useful at some level or other. Even Charvakas are useful. We have to accept Charvaka also, he says. So really, even Charvaka philosophy, during a particular stage, we Vedantin and Charvaka are equal, he says. So, well, let us think that way. So, when the Charvaka is useful, Vidyaranya says, do you remember Brahmanvalli? Yeah, I do remember Brahmanvalli of Taittiriya Upanishad. And in Brahmanvalli, that Panchakosha Viveka, do you remember? I do remember. And what is the first kosha there? Annamaya kosha. And what is told there? Atma is what? Atma is Annamaya kosha. Savaesha Purushaha Anna Rasamaya. Purusha, Atma is Anna Rasamaya. Atma is this Deha. Upanishad tells, okay? Upanishad are the sources for Vedantin, basically. So Atma is Annamaya. So let us accept Charvaka. That's what they also say. Atma is nothing but this body. There is no subtle body, there is no causal body, there is no consciousness, and there is no reflected consciousness. Nothing they accept. Except gross body. Charvakas do not accept anything. Only one reality, and that is Deha. And Deha is Atma. Oh, but Deha is conscious. Yeah, Deha is conscious. Not that consciousness distinct from Deha. So, Deha itself is consciousness. Why? Deha is conscious. You don't understand. When you eat this green leaf and then tuna, white tuna, and then that brown, and then supari, betel nut, and all combined together, still it is not red. But when you put it and mix with the saliva, then all together a new thing comes out. That is a red color. Red color was not there before. Green leaf and this white tuna and this brown powder, and then saliva also is colorless. Everything. But when they are mixed together, a new property arises. Same way, these 5 elements, basically when they combine in a certain fashion, consciousness arises. That's what they say. Therefore, Deha is a conscious, and therefore Deha alone is Atma. Atma is consciousness, right? Vedantin? Yeah. Therefore, Deha is consciousness. Okay? So, and Upanishad says, Savayesha Purushaha Annarasamaya. Purusha, Atma, is Annamaya. So, Upanishad says Annamaya is Atma. So, well, Upanishad describes, clearly prescribes a Dehatmavada. Charvaka also says the same thing. So, well, oh dear student, let us accept this. Why not this? And then, but then we should remember that, Upanishad further says, Anyontara Atma Pranamaya. So, this Deha is Atma, all right. But don't stop there and be happy. Right? Just Anyontara Atma. Anyaha Antaraha Atma Pranamaya. And therefore, basically, so if you say Charvaka is, not at all accepted, because he is negated later, then Sankhya Yoga also will not be accepted later. At intermediate state, they are different, that is okay. But then, ultimately, we are going to put the equal to sign. And therefore, Sankhya Yoga philosophy and we are not same. So, Annamaya is a Kakshatvena, Atmatvena Vipeyatam. In intermediate state, Annamaya also has been accepted as Atma. Atmatvena as Atma. Atmatvena is a Tritiya. It's called Itham Bhute Tritiya. In a form of Atma. Like that. Apyupeyatam means it should be accepted. In intermediate state, Deha is Atma, we have to accept. Same way, we can accept Sankhya Yoga, but we should remember that that is negated later. And therefore, same way here also we are going to put equal to sign. And therefore, is ultimately Kutastha and Brahman. Just for the sake of, for the namesake, it is different. It's really, essentially, both are one consciousness. 228. Atmavedo jagat satyam ishonya iti chetrayam tyajyate taistada sankhya yoga vedanta sammatihi. So here Vidyaranya educates the student, basically. No doubt that we do have some similarity. We do say Atma is basically Asangaha, Sarvagataha, Chaitanyam, etc. That's what Sankhya says. And Yoga says, Ishvara is like that. But, basically, it's a minor difference. The major difference between us is this. So we can't accept their philosophy, and I'm going to tell that he is telling here. There are 3 major differences between we and Sankhya Yoga, and therefore we cannot accept them. What? Atma Veda, first. He narrates in the first line itself, Atma Veda, differences among Atmas Sankhya prescribe. When he talks about Atma in plural number, definitely Jiva Veda is accepted by them. Or Jiva Ishwar Veda also, by Yoga of course, but they are one alone ultimately, partners. So Jiva Ishwar Veda also is accepted, and therefore that we cannot accept. Atma Veda we cannot accept. Upadhi Veda we accept. Atma Veda we cannot accept. And therefore we cannot accept the Sankhya Yoga philosophy. Then second difference between us and Vedanta, Sankhya Yoga is this. Jagat Satyam. World is a reality. So, countless reality. Everything is real. They say Akasha is real, Vayu is real, this is real, that is real, Klip is real, everything is real. Jagat is real. And there are Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Swagata, Bheda also which are there. Naturally, one, between 2 trees there is a Bheda. Yeah. And then between tree and stone there is a Bheda. Within a tree also there are Bhedas, leaves and this trunk and everything. And all this, all Vedas are real. Who says? Sankhya Yoga. So Jagat Satyam. And Jagat has all these Vedas. So that Veda also is real. We say that's not acceptable to us. That's a major difference between, second major difference between us and Sankhya Yoga. Third, Ishaha Anyaha. Paramatma is different from Jiva. Ishaha Anyaha. Of course, this does not apply to Sankhyas. This applies to yoga people. They very clearly say Jiva, Purusha. Because ultimately, they begin with this Purusha and Prakriti. Whole creation comes from the Prakriti. What happens is yoga philosopher basically borrows many principles from Sankhya. That's how they are partners. Anyway, to realize this Purusha ultimately, to gain moksha, this yoga people give a description of a Ashtanga yoga, through which you go to Nirvikalpa Samadhi and ultimately Jiva becomes free from all the calamities, etc. It gains moksha, etc. So, Sankhya adopts that. And these people, yoga people adopts basically a lot of principles from Sankhya. So, ultimately, but one thing is there between Sankhya and Yoga difference is Sankhya do not accept Ishvara. Yoga people accepts Ishvara. And they say Ishvara is Purusha Vishesha, as I told you, is different from this Purusha called Jiva, is different. Is a Purusha Vishesha with a certain Klesha Karma Vipaka, Ashayehi, Asamsprushtaha, etc. They have defined in Yoga Sutra. So Ishvara has a special qualities. Therefore Jiva Ishvara Veda they accept. Really, they accept that Veda. We say the Veda between Jiva and Ishvara is due to Upadhi. We have discussed also this. Superior attributes, inferior attributes, all due to Maya. We have discussed. So anyway, so these are the differences by which we cannot sit with the Sankhya Yogas, basically. Anyway, so Ishaha Anyaha, Paramatma is different from Jiva. This is for yoga, I mean. Iti Trayam, these three major obstructing blocks are they're there. If they are removed, then, and Taihi Tyajyate. Taihi means if the Sankhya and Yoga people, they give up these three things. The Atma Bheda they will not accept, and then Jagat Satyatvam they drop, and Ishaha Anyaha. Ishvara is different from Jiva, etc. If they drop that, tada, then, Sankhya Yoga Vedanta Sammatihi. Then there is a total agreement between all the three. And therefore, all the three means Sankhya Yoga will renounce and go away and accepting the defeat. No. They become the Vedantin. So if they don't accept Jagat Satyatva, they will have to say Jagat is Mithya. You cannot say Jagat is non-existent. Well, Jagat is not Satyam, therefore Jagat is non-existent. Nobody says. Because you experience the Jagat and still not real. Therefore seemingly real. Mithya. Yeah. And therefore, then they are with us. Yeah, Sankhya Yoga conversion has happened. And that is, they become Vedantin. Total agreement between three. So anyway, this is all like, they say the huge group of this Buddhist people. You who were saying earlier, Sarvam Shunyam, because they're one of the Acharya was there, Nagarjuna. Oh my God, he was really very brilliant person, very brilliant, who has, made this Shunyavada very popular also. And Shunyam is nothingness, right? But many people, even in Vedanta, I just got a question in email day before yesterday from somebody here in the United States only. Swamiji, ultimately, the ultimate reality, what we say Brahman is, and what they say Shunyam is one thing alone, like that. So, this is the influence of Nagarjuna. And Puja Swamiji also was referring to in one class. Well, they say, what you say as a Brahman, we say as a Shunyam. Some Buddhists claim like that. You say Prapanchopashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Sa Vigneya. Prapanchopashamam. Well, all this prapancha, that karya karana prapancha, entirely shamam has gone away. What is left over? Adhishthanam. Is this Brahman you are saying? Yeah. That is Shunyam. When everything goes away, karya karana prapancha goes away. What is left over? Please tell us. What is left over? What is left over? What do you see? If karya and karana, everything goes away, what is left over? Yeah. Correct. And therefore, ultimately, so basically, so they both are one. One is an existence, the other is a non-existence. Shunyam is non-existence. And we say to say Shunyam, someone is there. To negate everything as a non-existent, a negator is there which cannot be negated. That consciousness, without consciousness, you cannot negate anything. How can you negate the consciousness? Anyway, but then they once upon a time they were so upset that they were saying that what you say as a Brahman we are saying as Shunyam. So then it has been told to these people if Buddha was basically is teaching Vedanta because Shunyam and that is Brahman means he is teaching Vedanta. Then why do you have a Buddhism? Why do you have Buddhism? You should not. We never say Shankaraism or Vyasaism. We never say. Because this everything is Brahman is in the Veda. Even before Buddhism has arisen. Therefore, if you are really talking about Brahman, then you should not have established a new philosophy called Buddhism. You should be in the mainstream of the Vedanta itself. And Buddha must be the one of the teacher of the Acharya of a Vedanta. And now still, whatever has happened, but now you resolve the Buddhism itself and say we are Vedantin. Don't say you are Buddhist or Shunyavadi. Why should you say? If Shunyam and Brahman are one, we are ready to say that Brahman is Shunyam. Okay? Are you ready to say Shunyam as Brahman? No. And Buddhism has something more to say. And this. So this is all, it's not proper. Basically, so if let the Buddha join us as an Acharya, let him not claim any speciality. But the very fact that you don't accept Veda as a Pramana, where is the question of accepting Brahman? Where is and therefore that is not correct. But anyway, these Sankhya Yogas, basically, if they give up these three things, the Satyatvam, Atmas are many, if they give it up. And Jagat Satyatvam, they give it up. And Ishvara is separate from this Jiva, etc. If they give it up, he says Sankhya Yoga Vedanta Sammati. All the three are one alone. Total agreement between all the three. So this is how it is. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.